Good morning, everyone. Today is Class 3. I have the Class 3 lesson plan up here in Canvas from the Pages section. So the things that we're going to cover today, some things we'll do together when we get together at noon, is the item 1 here where we talk about the 12 principles of animation. We're going to start chipping away at those. But what I will cover in this lesson is working with Advanced Skeleton. We're gonna have our official introduction to Advanced Skeleton. And then when we get together at noon, I also want to take a look at item 4 here. This is something we'll do together. Of course, you can do it on your own because this comes from LinkedIn Learning as well. Then we might do some practice here with some of the Advanced Skeleton tools. And then for homework, what we're going to be working on, this is a little bit of jumping around. So we're gonna get an introduction to Advanced Skeleton today. But for homework, I want you to do this lesson in LinkedIn Learning. It's animating cartoon character in Maya, and here's the direct link to that course on LinkedIn Learning. Now, in this course, I only want you to complete Module 2, which is creating a jump. And I want you to use the character that they provide in that course. So I don't want you to use Advanced Skeleton. What you'll find is that the rigging for this character will be very similar to what we have for Advanced Skeleton. But as I think I had mentioned over the last week or so in class, is that as a character animator, we need to be nimble. We need to be able to jump to another rig, figure out how to use it, and then start animating. So that's what this is designed to do. So this is a completely different rig than what we're going to cover in class today. But again, I think that's good practice. It's a pretty simple rig. And what you want to do is when you go to this lesson, they'll have the source files there for you. You can download the source files, and then they have sort of the beginning and the end source file for every module. So you'll want to use it would either be the beginning, the beginning Maya source file for Module 2, or it would be the end source file for Module 1. And that will get you the animation that they've created in Module 1. Again, I just want you to do Module 2, which is where you're creating a jump. So you'll use that character, create the jump, and then when you're done, you'll render out a play blast, which I do want to cover today in class. Actually, I'm going to pause for a second because I meant to put this on the lesson plan and I forgot to. Okay, so I added an item 4 here, creating play blast. So we'll take a look at that in this video lecture also. So once you complete, back down to the assignment here, once you complete the animation, the jump animation from Module 2, then you'll render out a play blast with these options. Now, I prefer a QuickTime format. For some reason, some people have trouble with QuickTime. I'm not sure why. If you have QuickTime installed in your system, which you can go to the Apple website, get QuickTime, and then you should have the ability to render to QuickTime in any application. But you have to go download it. And it can be a little misleading because there's some... actually, let me just try here. If I type in QuickTime, download quick, there it is right there. So it's right at the top. Download QuickTime for Windows. So you want to download this. QuickTime and the H.264 compression is so much better than any type of Windows compression we can use. Take a few minutes to download this. Once you download it, then in Maya, you should have the option when you make a play blast to render to QuickTime. All right, so we'll take a look at that a little bit here. So that's our assignment for next week. And if anybody has any questions, we can discuss that when we meet in Teams today at noon. So I'm going to come back up here and I want to run us through working with Advanced Skeleton. Now, I mentioned this in class last week when we were in Zoom, but I'm going to put this in this video so we have it officially, is how do we install it? So the first thing we need to do is we go to the link I provided here, or you could just, if you did a Google search for Advanced Skeleton, you would find the same site. Then we go to downloads and we download the latest version, which is right here. So I'll click on that and it's downloading. And then once it's downloading, what I need to do is unzip it. So I'm going to open up my downloads folder over here. I'm doing this off screen in another window. So I have the zipped folder and I'm just extracting it. So you can see that popped up here. I'm extracting it. And that's going to extract it right to my downloads folder. I could keep it in my downloads folder if I want to, but what you have to keep in mind is that wherever you place the unzipped folder, it needs to stay there. You can't delete it, you can't move it, because Advanced Skeleton will reference it from here on out when you're working with Advanced Skeleton. So it's almost done. As a matter of fact, I might just pause until it's completed. Okay, it finally finished. For some reason, that last 10% took a little bit of time. So here's what's in the folder. So again, what do I want to do? I have this in downloads right now. I want to move this folder somewhere where I'm going to keep it. Maybe my documents, the C drive. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't matter where it goes. But once you place it there, then what you need to do is take the install.mel file and drag it and drop it into the Maya viewport. And that will auto install Advanced Skeleton for you. So the one other hitch that you have to keep in mind here is when you do the drag and drop for this install file, let me just bring Maya up, it's going to install it in whatever shelf is active up here. I like to put it in my custom shelf because there's nothing in there. So you see in my custom shelf, I just have Advanced Skeleton installed. I would recommend this custom shelf, but you could put it in whatever shelf you want. Just remember that when you do the drag and drop for that install file, that you have the appropriate shelf or whatever shelf you want active, because that's where it's going to put these 4 buttons. All right, so that's how we install Advanced Skeleton. So it's pretty simple. All right, I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm just going to do a quick run through of how Advanced Skeleton works. So in order to activate Advanced Skeleton, your interface will look like this. We just have to hit the big number 5 button here, and it will open up the rollout on this side. So there are lots and lots of rollouts in here. Now, in the rigging class, at least I'm hoping whoever's teaching rigging now is still using Advanced Skeleton, but you get into the pre-process of how we get ready for rigging with Advanced Skeleton. That's what's in this rollout. For us, we really just need to be working in the body rollout for now. So typically the way this works is we build our joint system and then we add tags to it. What are the different parts of the body? So it's a modular system. So I would tag the heel joint as heel, the foot joint as foot, and toes, and so on. And then when we build the system, it knows how to set up IK and FK, forward kinematics, inverse kinematics, and all that stuff. We do also have the ability to start with some pre-built, what we call fit skeletons. Now, I think last week in class I showed you a completely rigged character, which I found down here. Did I get that in the demo section? Yeah, down under demo, I opened the character called Tuna. Up here, though, we're just working with joints. So if under fit, I have a lot of these actually. They've added more. There's birds, bugs, cats, dinosaurs, dragons, fish. I'm going to just go with biped. So I'll do biped, and then I'll hit import. And what it does is it gives me just a series of joints. So you can see here, and they have the labels already on them. There's chest, hip, pelvis, do they call that? Root is called root. So the main one right there is called root. And all you really need to do is you can just take each of these joints and fit them to your character. Then once you fit it to your character, then we build the Advanced Skeleton rig, and then we start the skinning process. But again, that's all covered in the rigging class. We're not going to do that in here. So I just want to give you a bit of an overview of what all these different rollouts are for. So under the fit rollout, I added this pre-built fit skeleton. And then what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to come down here to the to build. And there's only one button in the build rollout. This is still under body. And it says build advanced skeleton. So I'm going to click on that. And now the script is running through the process of building the skeleton, or I should say the rig. We had the skeleton, now we're building the rig. And this is adding just a lot of functionality automatically to the rig system. And there we go. There we have a fully rigged set of joints basically, because I don't have geometry there. Now what I'm going to do also, another really nice feature that's built into this, so these next rollouts you see here are deform. These are all different methods for skinning. Now we could do traditional skinning with this, you know, just using the regular, let's see, skinning tool here, bind skin, or we can use these additional tools that they've set up. But then we have down here a couple rollouts that say geometry. And these are primarily to create a, what do I want to say, a proxy object. So we can create a skeleton. So it'll basically generate a skeleton looking mesh on top of these joints. We could do polyboxes. Now, some of these are for different things, like retopology is for retopologizing. But the one I'm going to work with here is just mannequin. This is just going to give me a better volume and visual reference for how I'm posing this basic rig. So I'm going to hit the create button under mannequin. And it just generates some geometry here. So it kind of looks like a little wooden mannequin. Funny looking mannequin, but a mannequin nonetheless. All right, so once we have that done, and again, I'm doing this just so we have something to work with that's not just a joint system. So now I want to take a look at the basics of how we can work with animating in the advanced skeleton system. So I like to open up the selector biped. I often refer to this, and I think I have it in our lesson plan as a synoptic view. And I think I get that term sticks in my head from soft image, which maybe some of you have heard of, some of you may not, because Autodesk retired soft image a number of years ago. It was one of the very first visual effects applications used in film and television. It predates 3ds Max and Maya. I used it for many years, loved it, loved it, loved it. It's actually much like Houdini, in that it has a node-based non-destructive system built into it. It was just awesome. And it created such an uproar in the industry when they announced that they were retiring it. But in any case, I think synoptic, that's the window. When we click on this little window that comes up that allows us to select the different rig components and functions in our rigging system. In here, I think it's just called the biped window or biped selector. Maybe I should change it to that, but I just like the name synoptic view, so I keep calling it the synoptic view, even though I think that might be soft image specific. All right, so in here we have where we see the actual body, those are the controllers for the body parts. So I can select each arm and put them down here like this, maybe bring this one forward, put that one back. When you're posing your character, I would also recommend posing in the local coordinate system. If you don't remember how to access the local coordinate system, we get it by just double clicking on any of our manipulator tools over here. So if I double click on the rotate tool, it brings up my tool settings, and in here I can change the axis orientation to object or world. We don't want to use world because world won't stay oriented to the different joints as I move them. So we want to make sure we're an object, and it should be on that by default. So you can see how my rotate tool is aligned to however I move the arm. So I can just pose the body parts here. Now the arms are in FK right now. So if you want to pose the arms, you need to select each of the controllers and just rotate it. Or we can select it over here. When you're working in FK, FK is always rotation only. I can't move. I mean, it allows me to do that, but you can see it breaks the rig. So when you're working in FK, forward kinematics, that means we start at the parent and come down to the child for posing. FK is always done with just the rotation tool. So if I want to kind of put this character into a walking pose, the upper body I'm doing with FK, then the feet are by default in IK. So you notice I don't have any selectors here. Like I could select the character's shin, but notice I can't rotate it. So when you're working, when body parts are in IK, we have to go to the child object, and then now we can rotate here for orientation, but we basically manipulate that entire chain, which is the left leg in this case. We do this with the move tool. So IK is with the move tool, FK is with the rotate tool. And now you can see how it manipulates that entire IK chain all the way up to the hip. All right, so I'll just move this foot forward a little bit. I'll move this foot back like this to get them in a walk position, the character in a walk position here. And I'm going to grab the center of mass and just push it down a little bit. So now my character is in a walking pose. Now, another thing we want to be aware of here is that when we're working in IK, especially on the feet, we have some roll controls. So I'll find the extra attribute controllers in the channel box. So let me move this over here. So I have the right leg selected, and now if I scroll down here, I can see there is roll. So now I could roll that character up on their toe a little bit. Depending on what state they're in for the walk cycle, we may need to roll on the toe here and maybe roll onto the heel for the front foot. Like that. And now I think my character, because I put those rolls in, the center of mass might be a little too low. I'll have to bring it up a little bit here. We never wanted to have something like this. We don't want the legs to be hyperextended. There should always be, even if we want the legs straight, it should just have a slight bend in it. Slight bend. A completely straight leg just looks hyperextended. It doesn't look comfortable. So basically I'm just using these. Now, actually, I didn't mention, I selected the IK controller here in the viewport. We could select it here. This allows me to select the IK handle. So when a body part is in IK mode, we can use these to select the IK handle. Same thing for the arms, but it's not going to do anything now because the arms are in FK. Now we will cover, I think maybe next week, how to do IK-FK switching, which has some steps, some very methodical steps you have to follow. Otherwise, you get completely lost in an IK-FK switch. So we'll take some time independently in another class to deal with that. So right now, while you're working with advanced skeleton, you would just want to keep the upper body in FK where it is and the legs in IK as they are. So once we get the body pose, I'm posing this in frame 1, I then need to set keys. I might also want to make sure that I am running at the proper frame rate. Maya, I can't see it here because my window is so crunched. But we can change the frame rate down here. Let me just open this up. Oh, there, you can see it. It's still in frame rate there, 24. Now working in games, we're typically going to go with 30. So I'll change that to 30. You want to do that before you start setting any keys. All right, so now I'm on frame 1.25. So let's even that out. Let's make that whole numbers 0. And then I'll set the time indicator at 0 also. So I'm starting at 0. So I have my character posed. I'm running at 30 frames per second. And now what I'm going to do is this would be what we call the blocking pass. I'm going to set my primary poses down the timeline. And this is called pose to pose. Now this is getting into some of the principles of animation. Pose to pose means that we set our key poses. When is a character's right foot forward? When is a character's left foot forward? So we're jumping around the timeline and setting these key poses. That's our blocking pass. Then I come back and add the in-between poses. Now, when I do my blocking pass, I usually key everything on the character. Then when I do my intermittent poses, or my I should say, use the right terminology, the in-between poses, then I will only set keys on that body part that I have modified. And I'll typically do that with the auto key button. I don't use auto key when I'm doing my blocking pass. And the auto key button, is going to get cut off. It is cut off here. I'll slide this over. There's auto key right there. So if you turn that on, it's going to start setting keys automatically as soon as you manipulate something. So I'll use that once I get to the in-between poses, but not for the blocking pass. All right, so we have a really nice button up here, the All button, that will select all of the control elements. And we also can key from right here. If I right click on the All button, I can key all of the controllers. So you see it put a little red tick mark there, and that's on every controller. So now what I can do is come down the timeline. I'll just go to frame 30, although this would not be the proper timing for a walk cycle, but this is just a demonstration right now. And then I can pose the character again. So at this point, I'm basically going to do the opposite of what we have. Now we do have up here in the pose menu in our biped selector, we have a mirror option, which works pretty well. It will allow you to mirror left to right, but what it won't mirror is it won't mirror the roll attributes. It won't change this one from a heel roll to a toe roll and the right foot from a toe roll to a heel roll. You're going to have to do that manually. But I'm not going to use the mirror button right now. I'm just going to do all this manually here. So I'll take the, and oftentimes I'll make the selection in the biped selector or in the viewport. It just, it's wherever my cursor is at that time. So I'm going to move this arm forward. And one of the reasons I don't like to use the mirror tool that often too is because it makes the animation too mechanical. Even if our walks look symmetrical, they're really not. There's a little bit of a difference. And that asymmetry is what gives the character more believability, the character animation more believability. So I'm just rotating them in the opposite direction. And then I need to do the same thing with the feet. So I'll take this foot's IK controller, move it back here. And you notice its roll is up. Now, actually, another thing I like to do too is, because this foot's going to have to come up to roughly the same position. Now, what I could do is I could use my reference grid on the ground as a marker, and that actually works pretty well. We see the heel is right around this point here. Or another thing you could do to mark the location for when you're trying to align body parts is you can come up here to the Create menu and create a locator. So if I put a locator in the scene, the locator is just this little, it looks like a crosshair. So I could take this locator and put it right where the heel is on the character. Right there. Then I'll leave it there, and then I can just slide it over so that I can put that foot's heel in exactly the same location, or roughly the same location. Again, we want a little bit of asymmetry. Same thing with the rear foot. I could add another locator. Now we do also have ghosting, which we'll get to in a few weeks, that would do the same thing. But this is a trick that we use a lot, so I wanted to point it out. So I'm going to align that with the toe. That's about where the toe is, and I'll put that one over here. So now I have these two locators that help me figure out where to move these to be roughly in the same location. Because, our gait doesn't change. So we want to make sure that we are we're getting the stride stays the same from left to right. All right, so I'll move this one over, and I need to take its roll and bring it up onto its toe. Like that. And it is definitely too far forward. So let me get my move tool again here and slide it back Yep, that's about the right location. Okay, now I'll go with the other foot and slide that one forward. And I'll take its roll and set it back to the heel. And let me get in here to make sure I've got it about where the locator is. I pushed my locator too far, I think. Why can't I grab the locator? There we go. Oh, look at that. I eyeballed it almost perfectly. All right. So there's the next pose. So same thing here. I'm going to select all the controllers, right click on the all button and key it. So now I have, from frame 0 to 30, I've got the beginnings of a walk cycle. A poorly timed walk cycle, because if we do if we do one stride over 1 second, that's a very, very slow walk. We'll get into the breakdown of walk timing probably next week, I think. Another thing that now what I can do is I can come in here and start adding my in-between poses. And one that we want to do here is we have to take a look at that center of mass. The center of mass isn't moving, and when a character walks, they will, at this point here, they'll actually be higher in the air because the legs are underneath them. Now, this is a point where I would, since I'm doing an in-between key, I would activate my auto key, which is a little off frame here, but I'll select it. It's right there. And then now watch what happens when I'm on frame 15. I'm right in the middle of this where the legs are next to each other. I'm going to lift the body up a little bit. Oops, don't want to hyperextend those legs though, like that. And notice how it set a key there. But it only set a key on the center of mass controller because that's the one I manipulated. Now, if you don't want to use auto key, what you could do is you could just, once you move that center of mass, you can right click on any of the controllers here and just key that controller. So there's a center of mass. I right clicked on it and I could key it. So that's how we could do individual controllers without using auto key, which can be beneficial too, because quite frankly, there's many times where I've turned on auto key and then forgot to turn it off. And then I start keying things like my lights and my light intensities if I'm rendering and shading, or I key my shaders, and we don't want that. So if you do turn on auto key, make sure you turn it off when you're not using it anymore. So now I should have, see how my character is a little more natural. I'm getting some up and down movement there. Okay, so that's a really rough walk cycle, or half a walk cycle. But this is just to get us used to how we set keys. Now, many times you're also going to decide that you want to start over. So what we need to do is we need to remove all the keys and then set the character back to its T-pose. So the easiest way to do that is to select all the controllers again with the all button. So we'll see all the keys down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the shift key on the keyboard and click and drag to select all of those keys. And then I'm going to right click on it on the selection and do delete. So now it's removed all the keys. So now if I scrub my playback head, we can see the character doesn't move, but the character is still in whatever pose they were in when I selected those keys. So the last thing we can do is just come up to the pose menu here in the biped selector and hit reset. And now the character is back to their T-pose. It's clean and we can start over again. So let's see, I have one other thing that I want to cover here in the video lecture. And I think I've already, well, no, I didn't talk about all of these. I did mention this last week. Don't forget this, if you're animating your character to move them around, the center of mass controller has the center between feet attribute, which is fantastic because that means when you move the leg IK handles, the upper body will adjust. So I'm going to turn that on. So down here where it says between feet, I'm just going to slide it all the way to 10. So now when I start moving the character, the upper body, or the entire body follows. So the last thing I want to point out is that when we're animating characters, and again, this is not specific to just Advanced Skeleton, there's always going to be a parent controller on the ground. and everything is under that parent controller. You can see when I select that parent controller, everything else turns green. What some people do is if they say, oh, geez, my character needs to start their animation back here somewhere, they'll take that parent controller and move it back there. That's functional, but that could get us in a lot of trouble, especially in games, because the character always wants to have a reference to the origin of the scene, and that's what the parent controller is for. So we never want to move the parent controller. We want to leave that at the origin. So if I want my character to start back here, what I need to do is I need to move it with the appropriate controllers on the body. In this case, it would be the left and right IK handle. And it's working fine for us because I have that center between feet on for the center of mass. Now, some rig systems, or many rig systems, will not have a center between feet. So let me just show you how we would deal with that if we didn't have that really nice feature. So I'll come back to the center of mass. I'll turn off the center between feet. So now watch what happens if I try to move with just the IK controllers. See, the center of mass stays where it is. So all I have to do in order to get my character back here is select both IK handles, or IK controllers, and the center of mass controller. Now I can slide my whole character back here and start my animation from back here. And the parent controller stays at the origin. All right, so that's the last bit of fundamental, how do we get started with character animation you want to be aware of. And again, this is the parent controller staying at the origin is, any well-designed rig should have a parent controller, and we keep that at the origin. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to cover in the video lecture. Let me just double check here. Yep, so item 1 we're going to do together in class today. We covered item 2 and 3. These are the tips that I just talked about right there. Oh, creating play blast. I forgot about the play blast. Okay, let me do that. And then that should take care of it. Item 5 we'll do together in class. Oh, I have 2 item 5s. Should be 5 and 6. Those we'll do in class also. And then we have our assignment, and if there's any questions, we can discuss that today at noon also. Okay, so let me just talk about doing a play blast, and then I'll end it here. So I'll just create a quick animation. I'm just going to slide this character from back here back up to the front. So I will key everything there. Then I will take the center of mass and the IK controllers. Now I selected them over here in the biped selector. I'll come down here to frame 30. I'll slide the character back to the origin. And then I'll do a key all again. So now I should have a sliding animation of the entire rig. Okay, so now I'm ready to create a play blast. So the first thing we want to do is kind of line our character up in a good position. We certainly don't want to be doing our play blast from an almost orthographic view like this, or directly from the side. We want a nice 3/4 view so we can see all the body parts. We want to be able to see the entire character animation, but we don't want it to be too far away, so we have all this empty space around. So we just want to frame the character up in a nice composition. So that works. Then I'm going to come up to the Windows menu. This is where we find the Play Blast. So under Windows, I'm going to open up the options for Play Blast. So in here, I decide how far do I want this to go. Well, my time slider goes out to frame 150, but my animation's only 30 frames. So I could either come back and adjust my time slider, or I could just say I want to set my own start end. So I'll say let's go from 0 to... Now my animation ends at 30, but I strongly suggest everybody adds a little bit of padding at the end so that when we review animations, they don't instantly loop back on themselves. Unless it's a looping animation like a walk cycle. But if it's not a looping animation, then we might want to add a few frames. I'm going to go to 60. That means that the character is going to animate from 1 to 30. Then we have a 1 second pause before we loop the animation again. Because if it's not a looping animation and we're reviewing it, and when we review animations, we usually keep them in loop mode so we can just keep watching them. It loops back so fast you just lose sight of what's going on. So I call that some frame padding. And then under Format, once you install QuickTime, this is where you should have the ability to render to QuickTime, which is Qt. And then under Encoding, I'm going to choose the, let's see, is it towards the top? Yeah, there it is, the H.264 compression. I want the quality to be 100. For now, we'll just render from the window, so we can leave that the way it is. And another important one is to bring the scale up to 1. This is a really weird attribute. Scale basically is percentage, so its default is 0.5. That means it's going to render it at half resolution. I don't want to do that. I want it to be at 100% or 1. Then we just check the Save to File button, and then we can browse to where we want to save it. So I'll just save it onto the desktop here. I'll give it a name. I'll call it test animation. So there it's saving it onto the desktop called test, and then I can just hit play blast. And it will run through it. And now out on my desktop, I have, there's my animation right there. This is in QuickTime Player. Another reason why I like QuickTime is that we can easily scrub back and forth with a QuickTime Player to see animations. Windows Media Player and some of the AVI, Windows specific players don't allow us to scrub like this. So again, take a few minutes today before class even to go out, just do a Google search for QuickTime and install QuickTime on your system. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to cover in the video lecture, and I will see everybody online at noon today.